So today we're going to be reviewing Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order by EA and Respawn, and the way we're going to break this down before we even get started is we're just going to hit you with the positives first and then the negatives second. Alright, let's just break it down real simple. There won't be spoilers in this, and I'll put a big ass warning on the screen when we're going to do spoilers, but that won't be till the very, very end, so don't worry about it right now. Alright, I'm going to try to show gameplay from the first half of the game. There might be some from later, but none of it will be spoiler stuff. But if you just don't want to see, anything at all from later in the game, you don't want to see what level you're on, you don't want to see the enemies, anything, then maybe progress a little bit further and then come back. So let's talk about the first thing. That's going to be graphics. What I don't understand with this game with graphics is, why does this guy look so good? Why does this alien man look so good? You'd think that would be the hard thing to do. People, everybody does people. That's easy, right? You can just copy what you've been doing for years. This guy and just all of the aliens look fantastic. And that just, like he looked great, and I was like, maybe it's just this guy. But, no, that is not the case. The pilot of your ship, just all of the aliens, even some of the characters that aren't like main characters in every single level, just look great. Obviously the main character looks great, but that just really blew me away. Like, look at all of his hairs and shit. Like, that looks great. The fabric on Cal's clothing, you can see where it's like torn and shit on some of the close-ups. And just graphically, on Xbox One X 4K, it is fan-fucking-tastic. So that's the positive for graphics. We got that out of the way, alright? So let's do the positives for combat. Ignore my trash parkour skills here. Alright, for combat, like I said, I only want to show gameplay from the first half, so I can't show you specifically what I'm talking about, but later on in the game, the combat is just fantastic. When you get all of your abilities, and I won't name what those abilities are for people who don't want that spoiled, but when you get all of your abilities, plus you upgrade your lightsaber combat and your stamina and your force stamina and your health and all of that, and you learn like the timing, because this isn't your spam X game. You can do that, but with harder difficulties and harder enemies, that's not an option. It's more of a Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Sekiro, Dark Souls, that kind of combat style. And I think that really, kind of draws the game out to a longer playtime and makes it more interesting. Like, these things kill me about 47 times on this first level because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to play. And that makes it more fun than just running through the level and just spamming X the whole level and not having any problems with any of the enemies, not having to think in the fights and stuff like that. And when we're talking about combat, again, I don't think there's any early in the game that I can show you, but the lightsaber fights are the best part of combat, by far. Fighting against creatures is fine. The boss creatures, they have unique ways to take them down. That's interesting and all. But the lightsaber combat really works. It's not just spamming constantly where you can't see what's going on. Depending on how you play, you can play like that if you're just on the easiest difficulty. But, it's like taking turns. You gotta know when to strike. You gotta lower their stamina bar, like in, like I said, like games like Sekiro. And once you lower their stamina by just hitting them or using your force abilities, then you can really do like health damage. And so the combat, like I said, later on in the game, combined with the interesting style they decided to go with instead of just a button mashing style, was what made the combat absolutely great in this game. And with that, we'll move on into story. Again, we're just doing the positives first, and then we'll come back and do the negatives of each one of these sections if it has any negatives. Alright, stories, without spoiling anything, the positives, this is the best part of the game. Okay? There's other weak parts of this game that drag it down a little bit, but if this game was just a show and you weren't playing, you didn't have to do anything, you were just watching the story, I feel like that would make it even stronger. The story, for the most part, it's not fucking the biggest twist you've ever played in your life. It's nothing like that. It's just a solid Star Wars story. Alright? I know that sounds like a Disney pitch, but it's not. It's such a solid, just Star Wars. Literally, like, there's so much lore in this game. And I don't mean, like, Legends, comic number 470, that kind of bullshit. Alright? If you've watched just the Clone Wars show, or if you just know a decent amount about Star Wars, like some people, probably the main audience for this game does, there's a lot of stuff that they throw at you that I won't talk about. They're like, hey, that's from this. Hey, that's from that. Oh, that's cool. I remember this. Oh, this song is in this movie. And just stuff like that. That just, that just adds to kind of the whole atmosphere of the game. Along with, this, like I said, the story isn't groundbreaking. It's nothing special. But it's not Battlefront 2. Okay? It's not like you know what's going to happen before you play the game. It's not that bad. But, like I said, don't expect some Red Dead Redemption 2, you're going to cry at the end level story. It's great. It has good characters. Some of the characters have development, not all of them. All of the characters are convincing as far as voice acting wise. There weren't any characters that I was like, oh, okay, that person doesn't belong, in this universe. But other than that, I mean, without spoiling anything, like I said, there's specific things I want to talk about, but we'll leave that for later. So that's really all I want to say on the story. Your droid companion, BD1, is probably the best part of the game. I'm not going to say story-wise. He has more to do than you would think. He's not just there to open doors for you, I'll say that. But before we spoil anything, we're going to move on to the next section of the positives, which just so coincidentally happens to ties in with the clip that we have running right now of customization. Okay. The lightsaber customization in this game. I expected to be able to change the color. Alright. Mainly because they gave me an ugly-ass orange lightsaber for pre-ordering the game. But other than that, I did not expect any sort of customization in this game. Okay? But you start out the game with blue, green, and if you pre-ordered, orange. And then, this isn't a spoiler, so I'm going to say it. If you don't want to know the other colors you're going to get, then skip like 15 seconds, like right now. But I'm going to tell you the other colors, alright? So you get blue, green, it's like a light blue, pink, purple, and yellow. I think that's it later. But, so that's just with colors, right? Then you can customize, that's a spoiler, so I can't say that, but you can customize the hilt, there's, I believe, 4 different parts that you can customize on the lightsaber. And there's pieces you'll recognize, like, hey, that's from Anakin's lightsaber. Hey, that's from Obi-Wan's lightsaber. But it's not just the lightsaber that you can customize. You can customize your character, but he has 2 different types of customization, okay? So he has his kind of undergarment outfit, like his shirt and his pants, right? And it's that default blue that you're going to see in all of my gameplay. And then the only other one I unlocked was a brown outfit. Then he has his ponchos, okay, and it's just strong. It's in my positives because there's so much of it. There's so many options that you can choose from, but they're all really ugly and they're all way too bright, but that's besides the point. Now, after your character, you can customize your ship, the Mantis, the ship that you'll be, spending a lot of time in customizing your lightsaber, planting plants. Yes, this is Farming Simulator now. And just, traveling, all that kind of stuff. So you can customize kind of the outside colors of your ship. And then you can customize BD. He has a decent amount of different colors. You know, I'm just going to address these quick negative because there aren't that many of them in the customization section. But with like the ponchos, they have like bright pink ones that just don't fit at all. None of the ponchos fit except for the default one. They're all way too bright. Same thing with some of the BD skins. The Starship skins tend to stay conservative and cool and they all work. But the other skins, you know, I just stuck with the default ones for the majority of the game. But that's all I have to say about customization. Honestly, this is what surprised me most about everything in the game, between combat, story, graphics, everything we've talked about, just the pure level of customization, especially the lightsaber customization. There's probably 20 options for each of, you know, the 4 segments of the lightsaber. I mean, there's so many options, and that kind of brings us to the next part, which I want to talk about replayability, right? So, obviously it's a story game, so you play the story, You can go back and play it on harder difficulties, of course, but there's chests and collectibles, okay? And the chests are kind of how you're going to get these customization options. And so you can go back and you kind of have to backtrack to different planets. So say you're on planet 1, which I won't name for spoiler reasons, and you can't get object X because you need ability X to get that object. So you got to go to planet 2 and then come back to planet 1 later. And, you know, some of that is within the story, some of that you come back and are able to get things, some of it you're going to have to do on your own at a later time, and that just adds more playtime. And then, talking about playtime, we'll talk about puzzles here as well. The puzzles, I don't really have a positive or a negative view on them. That's kind of why I put them in the transition here. I'm not very good at puzzles, alright? I'm not, like, stupid, like, I didn't have to look any of them up, but a couple of them took me like an hour. No, I'm not gonna lie. But they do give you hints with BD if you're just, like, really bad but don't want to look it up. He'll give you hints if you're taking too long. You can ask for hints. But, you know, some people say that they're just there to add runtime, and I mean, in the main story, not doing any of the optional stuff, there's, like, 4 puzzles, and you know, if you're good with puzzles, it's like a 5-minute puzzle, if that. So I don't really think they're there to add runtime. I think they were there kind of just to change up the gameplay. But another thing that's kind of in the neutral area for me is the parkour. There was a lot of parkour in this game. Like, I've been telling everybody that this is kind of like Uncharted Star Wars. That's what this game is. Or, you know, if you're an Xbox person, Tomb Raider Star Wars. And there's just a lot more parkour than I expected there to be. And that's not a bad thing, but you know the problem Assassin's Creed had early on, sometimes still has, where you want to jump left, but you jump right, and, you know, just that snapping onto an object. This game has that problem, not as bad as Assassin's Creed used to, but it has that problem. So if that kind of shit frustrates you, then, you know, the parkour can be annoying, and if you're not prepared for how much parkour is in it, then that can kind of throw you off, especially at the beginning of the game. So just be prepared to be able to do a lot of platforming, parkour type stuff. Okay, so now we're going to transition into some negatives, and we're going to start with the minor negatives, and then move to the more serious negatives later on. Okay, so the first one I want to talk about, I won't name any planets for people that don't want that stuff spoiled, but so the planet selection isn't great. There's, I guess you can say 7 planets. 2 of the quote planets you can only, you know, it's the first and last level, so you don't really get to go back. So really there's 5 planets really. And out of those 5 planets that you can go back to, only 2 of them are really memorable, I guess. You know, the other ones are fine. They're just not, what happens on those planets, the story, the level structure, all of that stuff kind of sucks. So, I don't know if this was on purpose, but one planet in particular just had all of the good combat stuff, like all of like the strong combat, the new like interesting enemy types, the new abilities, was all on this one planet. And then all of the big story stuff was on the other good planet. And I'm not just saying that because it had the good combat and the story stuff. I mean, the planet itself was interesting, and it looked good, and it wasn't confusing. Like, there's just some planets that are just ugly, and they're too vertical, you know? It's nice to have a vertical map and a wide map. But when your map is outdoors, not indoors, but outdoors, and it's 7 layers tall, and you can just get lost so easily. There's no fast travel system. Just some of the planets are lackluster compared to 2 of the other planets. That's all I have to say about the planets. So the next small negative I want to talk about is the skill tree. Okay? And it's not that there is a skill tree or that the skill tree is necessarily bad. It's just that there's maybe 4 abilities on the skill tree, and you can probably guess what those abilities are that I actually want. You know, there's making this force ability better, making this force ability better, making this force ability better. You know, those are the only skills I want. Playing on Jedi Knight, which I guess is the equivalent of normal, I didn't really need the health boost. I upgraded just because I had points. But, you know, the force stamina boost is really one that you're going to put a bunch of points in. You don't need the health boost on that difficulty. And really, you're just going to be upgrading your force abilities, honestly. There's a whole bunch, like, a whole bunch of other skills that you're just going to be buying just to buy, but you're never going to really use the moves. Or at least that's what I found. There's a couple of moves that they added that are cool and all, but they're not useful in combat. That's really just a quick thing on the skill tree. So the first, I guess, big negative, which you can call it, this doesn't bother you, you know, it's not going to be considered a big negative, but for me, some of the graphics, they don't really make sense to me. And what I mean by that is there's 2 types of negatives what I put here. So the first one is just looks fucking terrible. And what we're going to do here, if you watched my some of my trailer reactions for this game, I talked about the Wookiees. And you only saw it for about a split second and like 1 frame in the corner. And the Wookiee didn't look fantastic. And so this is what they look like in game. That's really all I have to say about that. There's a main Wookiee guy that looks a little better. But that's what the Wookiees look like. I don't know why. But yeah, so there's that. And then I don't know if it's just because compared to some of the alien characters, but some of like the main characters compared to some of the aliens just look okay. Like, I'm not talking like, you know, they look bad or anything, but they just, when compared to some of the aliens that look absolutely fantastic along with the main character, they just look fine. Like, I don't get why they couldn't do a person as well as they could do, you know, like a full CG character. I mean, it's all CG because it's a game, but you get my point. So that's just a couple of things I want to touch on with graphics first. The next big negative we're going to talk about is combat. And this is going to apply for probably everybody. The first, for me, it was 4 hours of combat is really rough. And that's just because they don't give you any interesting force abilities to kind of flow with combat, is 1. 2, you're still learning the system. And 3, you know, I'm not a fan of games where you don't fight people. Where you're like, people like enemies. So, if you're fighting like aliens that are like humanoid type style, that's fine. But, you know, I want to fight stormtroopers. Or you know, zombies or something that looks like a person. You get my point. I don't want to fight slugs. I don't want to fight, you know, rams. I don't want to fight spiders. All that's very boring. And unfortunately, at the beginning of the game, they give you a couple of those levels just back to back of just fighting, you know, nothing but animals. There's a couple of stormtroopers thrown in there, but it's just animals at the beginning. I think that's kind of to get you into the game, to get you like flowing with it and everything. But you know, I just found that really slow, and it's probably 4 hours. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it's a good chunk of the beginning of the game. But once you get past that, like I said earlier, it gets significantly better. You know, once you get your abilities, like I said, you get the flow combat, things get absolutely great. And so as of recording this, I finished the game an hour ago. Exactly an hour ago, I finished the game. And so, you know, the stuff towards the end of the game kind of sticks with me more than the stuff towards the beginning. And my biggest negative with this game, of course, is spoilers, so I can't tell you what it is, but I'll try to explain it to you. So, they start out doing it correctly. This character. You're gonna know what it is just by me describing it. And then they fuck it up. Okay? That's literally all I'm gonna say. And then I'll go into it in spoilers. And then the other thing I want to say is the story kind of does a backwards, you know, a 360 of what most games do. Okay? A lot of games that I've been seeing, you know, lately have just like a mediocre everything, and then the end is strong, right? And then that leaves you wanting more, or, you know, sets up a second one. This game literally does the exact opposite. The beginning's kind of slow, and then the middle, I would say from 4, it took me 12 hours to complete the game. From 4 to 11 hours is fantastic. Okay? And in that last hour, you're just like, what the fuck? Like, who wrote this shit? Like, it's a completely different person that wrote it. But, again, I can't get into that without spoilers. So, in the spoiler section, I'll talk about that more. So, I'll kind of just give you my final non-spoiler overview of everything. So, most of the graphics are great. There's some parts that kind of drag in that department. The story is the game's strongest segment, except for towards the end it lags a little bit. Combat's slow at the beginning, but picks up and gets fantastic middle through the last half of the game. The planet selection is fine, you know, if you're picky on that kind of shit, then maybe it'll be a bigger problem for you than other people. The customization is great. So, overall, I don't think this game is a 9 or a 10 like everyone's giving it. You know, IGN and all those people, Metacritic, it's getting like 8, 9, 10s. I can see the 8s for some people, but for me, what really brings this game down from those scores is the ending, the very, very slow beginning. Okay? You know, if I were to compare this to something, it's kind of like the Infinity War and Endgame kind of duality, right? So, Infinity War, you know, I like that movie more than Endgame because I find the beginning of Endgame intolerably slow to sit through and boring. And that's kind of how I feel about this game. The beginning, if you can just get through the first 4 hours, I mean, the first mission's great, but after that, you just got to get through the first 4 hours to where stuff starts picking up. And it might be different for you if you're not like, you know, 2 IQ points on puzzles. It might be shorter because I'm pretty bad at puzzles. But, you know, just some of the stuff at the beginning really slows the game down. So I would give this game personally a 7, you know. So if we want to break that down, this is for all of my games, just I haven't put this out there. So 1 through 4 is considered bad, okay? Breaking that down further, 1 through 2 is like terrible, and then 3 and 4 is bad. 5 is average, you know, the game's fine. 6 and 7 is good, 8 and 9 is great, and then 10 is like fantastic, flawless. So this game's like a 7. It's in that high good category. You know, it's not great. You know, it's not one of those games that we're going to be talking about forever. Like, Force Unleashed is better. Like, I'm just telling you, Force Unleashed 1 and 2 are better. But the game's good. It's playable. It's something that you'll revisit, you know, in a little bit. You're not going to be playing it over and over again. So, if I were you, do I recommend buying this game? If you're a huge Star Wars fan, and you know all of the lore and stuff, you're going to get all the references and all that stuff, then yes. If you can sit through the beginning sequences, if you like collecting collectibles and all of that, then yes, it's worth $60. if you're not that huge of a Star Wars fan, but you think the game looks cool, you like the genre of like puzzle, action, Tomb Raider, Uncharted type games, maybe wait for Black Friday to roll around and get it for $40, $30 in that range. If it drops that low, I don't know. But I would definitely not pick this game up for $60 if you're not a huge Star Wars fan. It's not that good. So what we're gonna do now is go into spoilers. Actually, no, we're not. This is post-render. I realized I forgot something. I stopped the render when it was almost complete. Just to say this, headphone users, I'm apologizing now. Fuck QuickTime events. All right, that's all I had to say. Spoiler section time. See you guys on the next one. So, I just wanted to say, from the bottom of my heart, fuck you, EA. Alright, spoiler time. Alright, so if you're here, it's spoilers time. If you haven't played the game and don't want it spoiled, leave now while we watch this man pour his salt over his food, alright? You got 5 seconds to leave. I'm telling you to leave now. This is your warning for spoilers. That was already a spoiler, so you haven't left, the game got spoiled. Alright, here we go. So, spoiler talk. What pisses me off, at the end of the fucking game, you know, when they show Darth Vader at the very fucking end, alright? And they tease him, right? They're like, oh, you're gonna fucking fight him? And they show that you have absolutely no fucking chance. I loved that shit, okay? You stand no chance. You try to fucking fight him, he just throws your ass around. He's literally tearing the whole ship up, killing all of his troops, trying to fucking just kill you, alright? And that makes sense, you know, you're not really that good with the Force. Darth Vader's super strong, that sets him up good, you know, maybe they could do a second one or something, you know, and then they fuck it up. 30 seconds, a minute later, if you pass the parkour the first attempt, which I did not, you know that they fuck it up. You hit him, and like he gets stunned by fucking your droid, which just crawls up on his shoulder, which is stupid. The black lady, fucking Seer, whatever her name is, fucking, she just does damage to him, and you guys practically beat him. Like, I would have preferred you just died. You know, you can't tease me with that shit. That, like, oh, he's so fucking strong, you don't stand a chance. Because that was good. I was surprised they did that. Because I thought you were just going to fight him and, like, beat him or something. And that would have pissed me off even more. But it pissed me off that you could, like, even, like, remotely did damage to him. I wanted you to just, like, completely not stand a chance. But that was just a small thing. Biggest problem is how this game ends. And I understand. They need to do it for, like, lore reasons, right? Like, Cal can't go collect all of the kid Jedis and train them, because that's what Luke does. But they could have had, like, a flash forward, and then he just died, and, you know, he gave it to Luke or something, and then Luke found all of the kids. But no, you know what they do instead? I mean, this is the spoilers review, so hopefully you know. He just cuts the fucking thing in half. The thing you just spent 12 plus hours, like, hunting for, playing the whole game, the whole reason you're playing this game, the whole thing, your goal, the whole thing you're going after, he just like, oh, what if the Force decide? He just fucking cuts it in half. So you basically wasted your whole time. You did that for no reason. So that kind of pissed me off, as you can tell. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to show gameplay of some of the boss fights because the shit's dope. But that's really all I have to say. Let me know what you guys think of the game in the comments below. Like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and I'll see you guys in the next one.